It used to be the employee professional. I'm expecting my leaders going to coach me and groom me and mentor me and pull me into their wing. And now leaders aren't staying a long time. Professionals aren't staying a long time now because everyone's world has changed because of the pandemic. But I believe that's a really interesting shift, that we're not waiting for leaders to, show us the way. We're taking the ownership to find our own way now. And that's probably a very, very massive shift that I've seen starting before the pandemic, but really accelerating in the last year and a half.
Cierto es que la manera en la que trabajamos ha cambiado muchísimo, pero también es muy cierto que esos cambios se vienen dando mucho antes de la pandemia por la que estamos atravesando. Y también es cierto que esos cambios van a seguir. Algunas empresas y algunos profesionales intentarán aferrarse a aquel recuerdo que tienen de lo que piensan era el status quo e intentarán imponer ciertas reglas de trabajo que quizás hoy ya no son las más apropiadas. Otras organizaciones y otros líderes en su lugar van a ver la oportunidad de crear espacios para que cada vez más personas encuentren en sus empresas la oportunidad no solo de construir una carrera profesional, sino una vida integrada que les permita servir a quienes mejor pueden hacerlo y crear la vida que quieren vivir también, justo como lo hace mi invitado el día de hoy. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y he creado este espacio para conversar con algunos y algunas de los más destacados líderes de pensamiento, negocios, educación, salud y cultura en el mundo sobre su trayectoria, lecciones y mejores prácticas para hacer en nuestra vida, de lo cotidiano, algo extraordinario. Esto es Entre Mentores DLC. Con más de 3 décadas y media de experiencia desarrollándose en el área de recursos humanos, mi invitado hoy ha colaborado con icónicas organizaciones en el mundo de la tecnología, incluyendo Cisco, Electronic Arts y LinkedIn, en la que fuera el primer Chief Human Resources Officer de la compañía. Todas estas organizaciones que con un liderazgo como el suyo han marcado la pauta de una renovada práctica de desarrollo y recursos humanos. Miembro de los boards de dirección de múltiples organizaciones como Cierto y Perk Labs, profesor y mentor en el Easy Digital University, donde tengo el privilegio de colaborar con él. Acompáñenme a aprender del Talent Hacker and Advisor de Cadigan Talent Ventures, el extraordinario Steve Cadigan. Steve, welcome to Entre Mentores DLC.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today.
I'm really excited to have you here on the show. I was really looking forward to it. We've been, in a way, collaborating with Easy at the same time for quite a while, and actually participating in the same programs, yet we haven't met in person.
I know.
But we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that as soon as this pandemic is over.
Yes, I look forward to that.
So, Steve, why don't we start at the beginning, like with all of our other guests, and you share with us a little about your experience, your history, basically what's been the path that you walked through in the last few years that has brought you to this point in life and in your career.
Wow. How far do you want me to go back? Just a few years, you think?
What are the most iconic moments in your career? What built Steve?
Okay, that's a fun question. I think probably my view of the world probably started very early. My parents were very much adventurous, and when I was only 2, they took the family from America to South Africa. Oh, wow. And the first 5 years of my life, I grew up in South Africa. And in 1970, when I was 7 years old, the South African government told many Americans like my family to leave the country. And so I was, we were told to leave, and I had to go start an adventure in a new country. And I didn't know there was different countries in the world. I didn't know there was something different. And when my parents left, there were many protests in the airport. My father had been very active in the Zulu communities on the weekends. And so that left an impression on me. Why are these people not happy that my parents are leaving? And I'm very young. But I knew coming to the United States as a young boy, there's a different world. And it met me the first day in school when all the kids teased me because I had a very funny accent. I talked very strange. And so that was another big moment for me, because my older sister and I would stay up late at night trying to speak American, trying to change our English Afrikaner accent to sound like we fit in. And that's, I think, been the story of my life for ever since then, that I've always been aware of difference in my environment. I've always been mindful of people who feel maybe they don't fit in. And I've always been trying to fit in or trying to understand my environment, because at a very early age, it didn't feel right to me. And so, but anyway, flash forward, I studied history in school. History and patterns and cultures always been fascinating for me. And I never had a plan to go into business, never had a plan of professional idea, none. I just knew in school I'm studying what I like. I'm playing lots of sports, which I love. And I didn't know that I could combine those two. And I got lucky to discover 1 year out of university, the world of human resources, recursos humanos, recruiting. And I just fell in love with it, because everything about teams and sports and getting people to work together to win, to achieve something great, is what I found in human resources in HR. And so I got lucky. And at that point, I'm 23, 24. I'm in San Francisco. And I say, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And over the next maybe 15 years, I moved to different companies and tried my talent and tried to grow my skills. And I was in a fashion company, then I was in an insurance company. And then I hit probably the biggest turning point in my career. I hit Silicon Valley. I hit high-tech land. And, what I discovered there was that this world of people and talent strategies in technology companies is very dynamic and very interesting. And leaders are willing to experiment and try new things. When I worked in the insurance industry, I jokingly say, when I was there, we would have a meeting to decide who to invite to the meeting. And in high tech, you meet someone in the hallway, you have the meeting right there, you make a decision in the hallway, and then you go back and the decision's done. What just happened? So the pace made me very excited and energized. And so I went and got a master's degree when I was in my mid 30s. I got a master's in human resources at University of San Francisco. And I've tried to be better and better and facing new challenges. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I was the first chief human resource officer for LinkedIn in the period of dramatic growth. We doubled the size of the company 4 years in a row. We went from 2 countries to 17 and from 3 offices to 26. Wow. And it was amazing. And so that was about, for me, that was 2008. So almost 15 years ago. And after doing that for about 4 years, I decided for the last 10 years, I just doing my own thing. And you covered some of those things, but I love helping leaders and businesses build new people strategies. And as you can guess, during the pandemic, everyone needs a new people strategy right now. It's been crazy busy and fascinatingly challenging and scary. For businesses and professionals at the same time. So that's just a little bit of my journey.
That's amazing. So I have to ask, because you've been doing this for quite a while. Yep. And you've been part of an industry that has been not only in constant innovation within itself, but also kind of leading the way in terms of innovation across many categories and different industries. And what would you say has been the biggest change that you've seen in terms of people development and HR, during the last 10 years?
Wow, there's you're right. There's so many changes. Probably the one for me, when I think about the biggest change that I've seen in the world of talent, sitting here in the heart of Silicon Valley in the last 10 years, is that I believe individual employees are taking their own initiative to lead themselves and not look to leaders to lead them and grow them and build them. They're not looking there anymore. They're saying, I need to own this. And I think leaders in Silicon Valley is probably one of the worst places for developing leadership, because there's nobody's building a 100-year company today. I don't think. Most people are building for now. And
Right.
there's and I'm not making a criticism, because the competition is so fierce that your first goal is to survive. Your next goal is to thrive long term, and you're always in this constant phase of survival. So if you're trying to survive now, are you going to build a leader for 5 years from now? Probably not. That's not important to you. So what I've seen is a change of it used to be the employee professional. I'm expecting my leaders going to coach me and groom me and mentor me and pull me under their wing. And now leaders aren't staying a long time. Professionals aren't staying a long time. So everyone is owning. And it's interesting, I've not thought about this until just now. Like, what am I seeing? And I'm probably speaking about something I'm thinking about a lot and reading a lot about now, because everyone's world has changed because of the pandemic. But I believe that's a really interesting shift, that we're not waiting for leaders to, show us the way. We're taking the ownership to find our own way now. And that's probably a very, very massive shift that I've seen starting before the pandemic, but really accelerating in the last year and a half. Yeah.
That's really interesting. One of the things that I'm always interested in discussing and learning different point of views is precisely the reason why so many people are starting their own businesses. And a lot of people, like you said, and it depends, of course, in the industry, but it would seem like in the tech industry, a lot of folks are creating companies just for the sake of, getting those, that funding, that venture capital, and they're building or creating something with the idea of selling it, making a quick profit, and then on to the next venture. And I don't know. From my point of view, that doesn't really serve a lot to people out there, no. Whereas a lot of companies like you've worked with, no, like LinkedIn, for instance, or used to work for Twitter. Those companies, I think, at least in my mind, these companies were created, by Reed. In the case of LinkedIn, or by Jack and Biz in the case of Twitter, with the idea of really doing something that lasts, no. And when you hear them talking, they've had that idea of having a business and a company, or a service rather, no. Like Jack Dorsey says, a movement that will outlive him and basically all of us. Right. And that in my mind, that's like the best idea for a company. And a lot of people are not thinking about that.
Well, listen, that's an interesting point. And I think that I've heard Jack Dorsey. I've become a podcast junkie. So, I love to be on your podcast, and I listen to podcasts so much now. I've heard Jack Dorsey talk about when Twitter started. And I've heard Reid Hoffman. I was with Reid when LinkedIn was starting, not in the very, very early days when it was an idea, but year 4, I joined the company, or 4 years old. And if you look, and they'll all say the same story, and maybe the exception is Airbnb. If you look at every unicorn today that's under 20 years ago, none of them are in the business they started out to be in.
No, they're not.
That's right. So this is a message for any entrepreneurs who are listening now. It's not the idea, getting the idea right now. It is the necessity to try and experiment and learn and iterate. And this is the world that I'm in, and build a team of people who can change and grow and adjust as the world changes, because it's going to change. So, but I also see, and Reid Hoffman said something when he was asked in the early days of LinkedIn, which I think is really important to talk about when you raise this question. He said, he was asked a question one time, Reid, you're building LinkedIn, who's your biggest competitor? Like, who are you worried about the most? Because it's a strange business. It's recruiting and networking and advertising and marketing and sale. Like, who's your biggest competitor? And Reid, he's so smart. And he said something which I think answers the question that you're talking about. He said, I worry more about a company that hasn't started yet than a company that's in business today. I worry about a company that will come out of nowhere and change my paradigm and make my offering irrelevant. And so I don't blame the business leaders that don't see a 100-year plan, that don't see 20, 30, 40 years, because Dorsey didn't see it and Reid Hoffman didn't see it. And I was listening to the podcast 2 days ago about the beginning of Netflix. They didn't see it. They thought they were dead. They thought that Blockbuster had killed them when, the second mortgage crisis comes and they're not making any money in 2008. They almost died. And they didn't know they could stream content. Their future that exists today didn't even exist when they built that business. So I don't blame business leaders to say, for now, we think we can create value, and let's see if we can build something sustainable long-term, right? And that's the harder thing to do is, and for founders who have an idea, they never want to change the idea because it's my baby. I can't change my baby. And we've seen what happened to Nokia. We've seen what happened to the Blockbusters, Kodak. If you can't change quickly, you're dead. And that's not comfortable. That doesn't feel comfortable, but that's part of the reality. So I don't blame the entrepreneurs who are looking for the short term, because nothing is guaranteed long term, right?
Right. No, yeah. And to think, that you listen to Mark Randall tell that story about Netflix and how they actually went and pitched Netflix to Blockbuster so that Blockbuster would buy them, and Blockbuster refused them, right?
For 50 million.
Exactly. Go figure. And then you think about other stories like Sergey and Larry going to Yahoo to sell Google, and Yahoo also declining to buy them. So it's interesting, no?
Right. And that's, I think it gets at the heart of what I think would be fun for us to discuss a little bit today. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately, is the whole notion of, what does successful business look like today? And what is, how that's changing, and how the power seems to be in the smaller, because they can move quicker, and the bigger companies that live today, have so much respect, because it's so hard to be big. And I was listening to another podcast this morning, and it was this guy, Jacob Morgan's interviewing the guy who was running GE after Jack Welch. Okay. Oh gosh, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name right now. This is a senior moment for me. But the guy who's running GE after Jack Welch, and they've lost almost $1 trillion of value in the last 20 years. And it's been a massive surprise that was the company everyone thought was the greatest, building to last. And, everyone's like GE, Jack Welch, amazing leadership. And what I heard in this podcast is that they were saying, well, what's it like to follow Jack Welch? And the guy's saying, well, Jack had a lot of strengths, but he didn't respect technology. He didn't believe in it. And look what happened to GE. And so the roots of that started, long time before, which is super interesting.
Wow. Do you think that sometimes, things can be happening at HQ in a company, and a different story might be happening in some of their affiliates, and that they can learn from other markets that are actually making things like we had Vladimiro de la Mora. He's the CEO of GE in Mexico on the show a couple of months ago, I guess. Yep. And he shared with us the story about, and I cannot remember the name of the global CEO either, so don't worry, it's not you.
Jeff Immelt, that's who it was. Okay. Immelt, yeah.
And so Vladimir was sharing, the whole process and the decisions, and how fast they had to learn to move faster and react faster and make faster decisions across an organization that had so many lines of businesses, many business units, and so many people having to make very difficult decisions, and they had to just basically, cut it down and learn how to manage a new business that was apparently much smaller, but became more efficient. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. I will tell you a story. Let's tell, and you've got stories like this too. I'm sure you do, where a big company comes to me and says, Steve, and I do a lot of short term. My job today mainly is I go to a big company and I shake them, and I try to help them think about something differently. And they ask me, please, show us a different way of doing this because we're stuck. We're struggling maybe with hiring, with growing, with changing, with innovation, with digital transformation. And so usually they're saying all the right things, and then they say, but please tell us about companies like us, how they do this. But don't just tell us about Silicon Valley, because we're not in Silicon Valley. Tell us about companies like us that are doing this. And I said, okay, wait. First, I don't have a lot of good stories about big companies like you because they're getting killed by the companies here, the innovative companies. I said, but here's what I'll do. And it forced me, after being very frustrated when they would say this, because I'm not, I don't have any success stories from big companies that I've worked in or that I've consulted. I said, okay, let me look at this a different way. Let me pick a big industry and let me look who's killing that new industry in a different way. And I said, the automobile industry. Let's look at automobile industry. Who is the most valuable company in the auto industry today? It's Tesla. Tesla today is worth more than Honda, Toyota, and Ford combined. They're not making more money. They're not making more profit. They're not selling more cars, but they are worth $500 billion. Why? Because the market believes they can grow and change and innovate faster than all the other car companies. And then, so then I go to these big companies and say, is that an interesting story for you? Yes. Okay. Well, let me tell you another story. I said, I bet when you hire someone in your company, you say, you need to work in our industry for 5 or 10 years, or you don't understand our industry. Did Tesla hire anybody from the auto industry when they started? No. Mm-mm. They hired space scientists from NASA, people who saw the problem differently. And this is the problem when you're talking about the GE story. Hey, we got to learn a different way. It's almost impossible to learn a different way and reprogram yourself, your company, the divisions, the organizations, the team, when they've been working this way. It's like teaching American football. Okay, now you need to play soccer. You need to play real football. Like, what? No, I learned to play that game. I got to play a different game with different rules and different referees and different. Yeah, you got to do that. No, I can't do that. And that's what these big companies are facing. It's a different game. And I feel they're scared and it's hard to learn. It's not impossible, but it takes longer because you have to unlearn first and then start to relearn.
Yeah, no, you just reminded me of an example that I have a close friend. We became close friends over the years, but I remember we first met. He founded an advertising agency 22 years ago. And we first met. I was working for Google, and he approached me. And he had recently launched. He had maybe his agency had been operating, doing just website designs for maybe a couple of years or 2 or 3 years. And he approached me and told me, we've never met. You don't know me. You don't know the work that we do. We're only doing web design right now, but I want to build one of the best, most significant digital advertising agencies in the market. And that's what I'm going to do, but I need someone to help me and teach me to do some stuff. Would you be willing to help me out? And we met at his office in Monterrey, in the city of Monterrey.
I've been there. Beautiful.
And it was, it's a very nice city. And I remember it was him, his wife, and a web developer. That was it. That was the whole team. And we sat down around his desk, crystal desk, and we actually began to draw certain things about a plan that he was putting together on the desk, because he didn't even have a whiteboard or something to write on. So we were working on that. Fast forward to 2021. He has an agency that operates in Monterrey, in Mexico City, has over 300 employees, and became one of the fastest growing agencies in Mexico, one of the most successful, not necessarily got involved in like awards and that sort of stuff, but he really wanted to solve business issues, and business challenges. And a few years later, like maybe 15 years after that, and I was before I joined Twitter, I was running Proximity in Mexico. It's the digital agency within BBDO, and we had to compete in like a couple of pitches. Mm-hmm. And I remember the CEO of BBDO telling me like, why is this guy winning? Like, why is this guy winning everything whenever they participate in a pitch? And is it because they have better cost, because they're smaller and their overhead is smaller? I was like, no, it's because he thinks differently.
Right.
He understands the challenges. He sees the challenges in a very different light. And that's what's getting him the results.
Yeah. And there's a lot of power in that. Let me tell a similar story that brings in GE into technology. When I was at Cisco, we had many people, when we started to get big, we hired many people from GE because our CEO was very impressed by Jack Welch and said, for us to be successful, let's go hire people from the successful big company. Let's learn how to them. But he made one mistake, and I don't blame him because John Chambers was one of the best CEOs I ever worked for. He made a big mistake, or there was an oversight. GE had never been in the technology business. Never. None of their companies. I mean, yes, they're making airplane engines, but that's not software. That's hardware. Right. Okay. And now increasingly, I think they're using software and firmware in their airline engines. Anyway, that's another conversation. So these people in human resources had never been around a model where the most important resource is not the intellectual property, it's the people. It's their ideas that they can make in the next generation. And the way they make those ideas is just like your friend. They learn something, they try, they see what works, they see what doesn't work, they fix it, they tweak it, then they implement something new, they learn the mistakes, they fix it. That is software design. It's A/B testing. Mm-hmm. You try one way, you try another way. Which is the better? Okay, this way. Okay, then let's fix that. Let's try some more things than we fix. Now, when you take that approach in software development, experimentation, and you move it into people development, now you can move fast. And that's not how big companies work. We're going to do it this way. They never try. They never experiment. We're going to go this way. This is the new bonus. This is a new org structure. This is a new communication plan. This is the new bonus. And they don't test it and iterate and learn quickly. And they don't have a population of software people who are used to trying, learn, fix, tweak. And that is how I believe in the pandemic, many technology companies have done so well, because they're used to something's crazy happening. Let's see what we can do. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And the big company's like, whoa. How are we going to do this? And it's not built into their culture to move quickly. And that's a very big competitive advantage.
Antes de continuar con este episodio, déjame platicarte que Entre Mentores DLC es presentado por Ricolto Café, una empresa 100% mexicana que desde hace 20 años ha llevado la experiencia del mejor café gourmet de México a miles de oficinas en este país. Hoy, Ricolto Café llega también hasta nuestros hogares a través de su nueva tienda en línea. Puedes conocerlo mejor y hacer tu pedido de cosecha especial de Veracruz, mi favorito, o de Chiapas en grano o molido en ricoltocafé.com.mx. Eso es Ricolto con K de kilo. Visita ya ricoltocafé.com.mx y lleva el mejor café de México hasta tu hogar con Ricolto Café. That's a great segue to my following question, because you posted the other day a video which I really liked, and I think I commented on it, about the future of work. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. Future of work is changing significantly. Yet there are still some companies that don't see it that way. And even some tech companies that are actually trying to go back to the old ways. Mm-hmm. Let's call it the pre-pandemic way of work. And some other companies that are moving forward and are trying to, make the best of all things. Mm-hmm. And so What's happening in that front on your mind? What's going on?
Well, you know, human nature is driving our behavior. When we're afraid, we do what we know, right? As in our relationships with people we love, when things get scary, or in professional work, and I've seen this my whole career, just like you have, when someone is under stress, they go back to what they know. And this has been the most stressful moment in our lifetime, not just at work, at home, at schools, and in our houses. And, you know, in the United States, for some reason, we couldn't get toilet paper. Wait, we can't get toilet paper. Everybody go get toilet paper. I mean, the silliest things, but then it's, you know, fearing for your health, fearing for the health of your parents, and feeling for the people who in your family who have, you know, health concerns. And so, wow, it's been really hard. So I don't blame, you know, my wife and I have this conversation all the time. She, you know, one of us will say, I can't believe, you know, we have to take all these tests for the airlines to go on a plane. Like, what's the problem? And then we say, well, everyone should get a break now because we didn't prepare for this, you know? And so I think everyone is in a different, you know, there's a lot of us in human resources that study change. And the change process is usually like something changes, and then there's anger, fear, rejection. And then at some point you sort of accept the change, and then you try to, you know, adapt a little bit, and then you sort of move on. And everyone is in a different place in their change curve right now. And it's hard. And why big companies have a hard time, and this is, you know, we've seen this the last 10 years, why big companies have a hard time going through digital transformation in significant measure is because the leadership is fearful they will lose control, lose power, and they will be put in a world that they're not sure how to operate in, and the world they're in now they're very comfortable with. And this is what we're seeing. I mean, the pandemic is like a digital transformation that is like what you call a hostile takeover. It came in, it took over. And some people are going to be okay, and some people aren't, and that's just how it's going to be. And so I tend to want to go play with the people who are like, let's go, let's build something better. And then I'll try to help the people who are like, I'm not sure I like this, but can you help me? But the people that say, let's go back to that, I say, there is no that. That's gone. That's never coming back, right?
Absolutely. That's one thing that's really going to make a difference in the upcoming months, I would say, because some companies are even, you know, already gave their employees like a deadline to go back to their offices come September, you know. And I it's not like I don't like to think negative. I always try to see things on the positive side, but also on the realistic side. And I think that there are some countries, some cities that are not yet out of you know, the whole thing. And I don't know that September is going to be like the month like everybody's thinking. I remember when the whole thing started back in March of 2020, everybody saying like, this is gonna be like 3 weeks, come April we'll be fine. Then it was okay, well, by the end of May. How about July? Well, yeah, we think that September, and then it was January, and then right. So I think we well, now one thing though, seeing things from the positive perspective is I think that there were two things that the pandemic helped us realize. Number one is that technologically speaking, we were ready, at least people who were fortunate enough to work at an office. No, the technology was available and we were ready to move and do home office, and work remotely. So we had the resources to do that, even though many companies did not want to, or they were procrastinating and were afraid of making that move. We proved to ourselves that we were ready in that sense. The second thing I think that happened is that we also learned that we were ready, mature enough, and not only that, but we wanted to integrate our professional and our personal lives, not to balance them, because for years and years we've discussed like, how can we balance our professional and our personal lives? And to me that doesn't exist. However, what does exist is a way to integrate our professional life into our life and just have one life. And I think that the last 15 months have helped prove that we can do that, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the challenge is, I think for all of us, we didn't have a choice in this, I worry about the integration from the point of burnout that now we have work and family, work and home have merged. It was a hostile takeover. The pandemic made this happen, right? Here we are.
Right.
And I like how the Canadian government said it. We said, we're not home doing work. We're at home in a crisis trying to do work. I was like, okay, that's fair. We have new challenges with whether it's kids' education, access to food, healthcare, lots of things. We saw what happened in New York City was very scary. So people aren't working from home, and maybe we're more in a normal phase now, but nevertheless, I think some really interesting things have happened that people discovered that they love having the freedom of managing their own time.
Yeah.
That I can go shopping on Tuesday morning and there's not a lot of people there. But if I go get my food on Sunday, like I had to before, it's crowded and the lines are long and the traffic's bad. So I like that freedom. I don't want to give that up again. But at the same time, I worry about this combination because companies haven't had to help people manage their time and haven't had to help people learn to turn off, and most companies are not motivated for you to turn off. They're motivated if you don't turn off. Right. They benefit more if you don't. So, but that leads to burnout, that leads to stress, anxiety, and we're seeing that play out now. That very few companies do I know say, no emails on the weekends, no meetings after 5 o'clock. You have to turn off. This is really important. I don't see that so much. And I understand why. There's always going to be exceptions, but I worry this is part we talked earlier about. There's a new game we're playing. We're playing a new game now. And yes, we can do it in some levels, but we need to learn how to turn off. We need to learn how to build ways of identifying when people are burning out and having ways of helping them. And this is why in most of the companies I'm working with, before the pandemic, the big concern was racism, gender equality, diversity. Mm-hmm. Now, wellness. Wellness is bigger concern than all of that because everybody is concerned about the, burnout and loss of attachment. And think of how many companies have hired during the pandemic and nobody's ever met these people, which I find interesting. So I am starting to read stories where these organizations say, well, you need to come back, 1 day a week, 2-3 days a week. They're coming back and they're saying the people who left are not the same people who are coming back. They've changed. Everybody's different now. And so they're having like new orientations for the people that already worked there before because they're different people. And not entirely, but we're all seeing the world differently. And that's a moment in time. We don't know how this is going to play out. And this is part of the posting that you saw that I did. I said, I don't think many organizations understand that everyone sees the world differently now. Mm-hmm. And even though the people who are running the companies also see the world differently, I still feel they're looking to go back to something that they're more comfortable with. And being nervous to lean into doing something very, very different.
So I was reading an article from a newspaper in Spain this weekend, and it was from Raquel Roca. She's an author, amazing author. Wrote Nomads and Silver Surfers. The future of work is for 40 and above. That's right. Like the subheadline. So we made it. But and in it, the article said it focused on the importance of people, professionals, becoming, and they used a very specific word, polymaths or polímatas in Spanish, which is basically people who have different specialties that are, whereas companies for a long time focused on hiring people that were very specialized on one area, now they are looking to hire people who have different interests and are able to branch out and think differently, because they might be economists who are also artists, who are also developers, who also play music. And just like for the benefit of the people who are not able to watch this, I can see your drum set behind you, and that's really interesting. Like that says a lot. Like people need to have different outlets, creative outlets, right? So that has to play a role in my mind. That has to play a role on people branching out and moving, maybe even moving and changing entire careers, right? Especially after what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think that is the long-term future, where I believe a career is going to be a beautiful quilt of lots of different things coming together, not just doing one thing, but doing many things. And it sounds like what you heard is, and I believe this to be true too, is many things at the same time. Not just I did this and then I did this. It's like I'm doing these things. And the technology is allowing us to do this. And I think the desire is there for people to see, I can do that. And the challenge comes down to something very practical. In the United States right now, in the world that I spend most of my time in, medical insurance is really expensive unless you work for somebody else. They can underwrite that. You have to make a lot to be able to pay it. Even with Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever, Trump tried to kill it. It's still alive. The Supreme Court's keeping it. That's very hard, number one. Number two, to buy a house from a bank and get a loan when you don't have a job is almost impossible. So we have many systems that have been built around, you need to have an employer, you need to have a paycheck, you need to have a company you work for. And I don't think that's going to change as fast as the desire for people to want to do this gig reality. Because those are very real problems, buying a house and getting health insurance, right?
Absolutely.
And so, those are going to block people. Those are going to make, and I know friends who are incredible entrepreneurs. My kid needs cancer treatment. It's very expensive. I can't get a plan unless I work for this company. So I'm going to go work for this company. Making a career choice because of the financial concerns for their family. And that's real. So I hope that will change over time. But I think every country has these challenges. I'm dealing with companies in Spain, Telefonica, big, telecommunications provider. Their biggest problem is not the new technology. The biggest problem is the system they built was to keep people as long as possible, and the government has made it their responsibility to keep people almost for their whole working life. So for them to, I'm going to move out these 3,000 people, their company's bankrupt. They can't afford to pay those people to leave. So now, so their only process is, I need to re-educate, upskill, grow the people here. But those people are like, no. I don't really want to learn something new. It's not what I went to school for. I want to do this. And so you see that there's many nationalized systems that I think, I'm as excited as you are around the new future, and a patchwork of careers is great. But the truth is there's going to be block of that being realized at scale in many countries because of things like I just said, which is hard. And that's going to require lobbying and changes. And a lot of these young, people who see a career as a multiple, they're going to need to go into politics and start changing this stuff. But that's going to take, I think, years for that to, and maybe when our children are I don't know, but it's going to be a while. And that's why I don't get too okay, I see the future, but there's a lot that needs to change for that to really come to life,
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really good, because we often, read and hear about, this future of work and the gig economy and how things are changing, and, the the easy access to learning more and growing, and that's all true. But this part, the other side of the coin, is as real as the other one, and we have to learn to deal with that. So thank you for sharing that. So let me change gears as we move into the final lap of our conversation, and thinking about your career, with all the ups and downs in your career. If Doc Brown, remember Doc Brown from Back to the Future?
Yep.
If Doc Brown were to show up at your door with the keys to the DeLorean, and you could use the DeLorean to travel to whatever point in time, past, future, whenever and wherever, to what point in time would you like to travel, and for what?
Okay, well, I'm a history major, so I have
didn't know that.
a real desire to go back in time for sure. I would love to see the Earth probably around, and I'm thinking, probably the west of California, the west of the United States, or, many, many countries. Like, how wild was nature? I've read stories that there were birds, when they would migrate, the sky would go black because there's so many birds. Like, I want to smell, what does the earth smell like when there's no cars and no pollution? How beautiful must nature have been, and amazing. And must have been, I'm sure it would be scary, but I would like to go back to maybe, let's say 1700, and be on a boat coming from Europe to America somewhere, and maybe in Mexico, and just see, like, wow, the natural beauty of the animals. And so many trees have died in the Americas when the European settlers came over and brought disease, and not just people, but trees and plants and other things died that, and so I would love to, I love being outside. We were not, we're creatures, we're animals. We should be outside, not inside. And that makes me feel most alive. So I guess maybe that's not the answer you were expecting, but
that's amazing. That's a really good answer, actually. So we're made to be outside. That leads me to ask about habits and routines, because I suspect that you may have very specific habits or practices or things that you want to like to practice on a daily basis, or at least every week. So, and I also, I think that for a leader to be as productive and do as many things as you do, you have to have developed and integrated certain routines and certain habits in your life, right? So what habits and routines have you integrated into your life?
Okay, a few, and I don't know that these, I could look back and say these things really served me well, but I will just share some of the ones that it's pretty, if you were to talk to my wife, and she will tell you all of my habits better than I can, but the first hour to 2 hours every day I read. That's all I do. I read. And it's usually 5:30, 7:30 in the morning before everyone's awake. I'm reading newspapers. I'm reading stories on the internet. I'm reading about the future work all the time. And I try to put a game plan together during that time of what I want to do that day. Like what one or two things I want to do that day. So then I will, and I'll go back the night before I go to sleep every night. I look at what I'm doing the next day. What is, and in the pandemic, do I have to shower tomorrow? Do I have a webinar? What simple things. And now that the kids are playing sports again, now my weekends are gone. I have driving all over and things like this. So, but I'd like to spend the first part of at night, look at the schedule really quickly. What's happening tomorrow? Am I ready? Then I want to make sure that in the morning I'm just, have my coffee. I love my coffee. Coffee is very important, but just 1 or 2 cups, not a lot. And sometimes if it's espresso, I have a good, and cheap coffee is no good for me. It has to be really good coffee. So I like to read in the morning, and then I want to. So those are 2 habits. The other one is try never to have meetings on Monday. Never have a meeting on Monday, because Monday is finish the stuff from the week before I didn't get done. and fix the rest of your week. So I try to keep Monday morning, if I can avoid it, I don't have meetings. And I use Calendly, which is I give people my schedule, but I say Monday's not available and Friday's not available. So if you want to meet Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I do that. So that's a habit. And the last habit I would say is and you can probably tell from our conversation, I really like to talk to, many people during the week, even if it's about nothing. So last night, my son was in a basketball tournament, and I went next to another parent who I hardly know, and I just sat down and got to know them the whole hour and a half we were there. And so we were just talking, what do you do and how do you like it and how's the pandemic and what's your son thinking about college and blah, 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 blah. And so I really feel I don't think about this, but I'm just a curious person, and I always love to learn from other people. And I think you and I are wired the same way, and and so I look to try to build conversation into my day as much as possible with some new people. And that's been, that makes life, for me, that makes the day much more fun, when I have the chance to do that.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Also about the coffee. This show is sponsored by Ricolto Café, which is,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's one of the best coffees in Mexico. So
okay,
when you're done
next
I'll
time.
make sure to get you some.
Great.
So before we move into the last couple of questions, where can people connect with you and learn more from you?
The easiest way to find me is either through LinkedIn, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's another habit. I use that probably a few hours every day. And it's not to look for jobs. It's mainly for, what's happening in the world, whether it's news or connecting with friends and people. So if you want to find me there, please do. My website is a good place. If any of the things we talked about are interesting to people, I have many, many articles, and some of them are entirely written in Spanish. So I've been interviewed a lot in Mexico and Spain. And so there's a lot of articles from Spanish publications, if that's interesting. Perfect. My website is in English and in Spanish. So we made sure that we did both. So stevecadigan.com is the best place to be able to reach me. And this last year, and don't laugh when I tell you this last year, I started TikTok, and I started an account there, and we just hit 110,000 followers, which was a big move. Yeah, we had one post. I put a post up 2 weeks ago that got 1 million views in 3 days.
Wow.
And it's about the future work and thinking about how different it's going to be. And it just took off. So that's another place where I engage with people there. And I love to hear what's on people's mind. And you can ask questions. You can go there, ask a question, and I'll do a video answer that the world can see. So and I have about 45 video answers up there. So it's really fun.
The second to last question I want to ask you is a question that I call the 7 days question. Basically, it's a question that I'm doing on behalf of Mexico Puede. Mexico Puede is a community of entrepreneurs who got together when the pandemic first started to, do joint efforts to help each other with learning and training and education, so that, those companies, the small and medium companies that were more affected and did not have a lot of access to more training could access some quality training. So the question is, if you could recommend one single thing to the people who are listening to us, that if they do that in the next 7 days, they could really improve their life or their work, what would you suggest?
Wow. One thing in the next 7 days, and it will improve their life significantly. Only get one.
Or their work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I would ask people one thing, whether it's one person or ask one question to the people you care about. Share what your intentions are. I'm a very big believer in, I want to go here. I want to do this. I want to achieve this. I believe in the power of intention, and I've seen, Oprah, many other people, and I've experienced it in my life many times when I say I want to live internationally. Boom. In 6 months, I'm living in Singapore. I want to write a book. Boom. Finish writing. Like, I want to have children. I became like when you share that out loud with people you care, not that, I promise I will do this. Not like that. Just, I want to achieve this. That's one thing. And the other, another habit I have, but it's not a daily habit, it's a yearly habit that I strongly recommend people do is every new year, I sit with my wife and we write down what we want to achieve personally, as a family, individually, as a family, what we want to achieve and what we want to achieve just to make the world better. And I will tell you, we have achieved way more than I ever thought we would, because we wrote it down and we shared with each other. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I love that. Nothing like having very clear intentions set and just, when you have that level of clarity, it's easy to take the first step, and then the second one will follow up naturally, and that's great. That's great. That's right. Advice.
And you start seeing things when you tell someone, it becomes more real for you. And then I start seeing articles that maybe I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't laid the intention out, or people will start talking to you and like, what? It's like, you're the Amazon Alexa in my house. You heard me say something and now you're telling me something different. I mean, don't underestimate that. And I think it's incredible how that works, and it's your brain learning to give you what you want, which is, and the other thing I want to be clear, I'm not saying commit to something really crazy, really big, millionaire, don't, something maybe simple. Like, I want to improve my relationship with my father. It could be something, or I want to help my child learn how to ride the bicycle. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be massive or even business oriented. If it makes you feel like it's going to put you in a better place, it's worth it. Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. So the whole premise of the show is to learn from leaders like you, how you turn your day-to-day into something extraordinary. So how does Steve Cadigan turns his day-to-day into something extraordinary?
I step back and think about, I feel really, really lucky to be able to look at my children and to look around at my family and say, I became the best in the world at doing what I do. When I was running human resources at LinkedIn, that's like being the striker for Barcelona. Like, you're like, that is like the best, like on the best team and the best time in that company. And I feel very, very proud. I had no plan. I had no ambition to be there. I never wanted to be, I want to be a big, successful executive. I never wanted that. But I wanted to always be good. I always wanted to do something that mattered. I didn't want to work for a company that didn't care. I didn't want to work for a boss that didn't care. And from one opportunity to the next, I got a little closer, and a little closer. And what I wanted became a little more clear and a little more clear. I like working in this kind of environment with these kinds of people and this kind of vertical. And the funnel led me to something really, really incredible. And there's no one dream job for all of us. There's many dream jobs, but I think it's the best lesson that I could share is, I believe I got to what I wanted because people trusted me, people respected me, people felt that I was credible and I had good judgment. And you can't fake any of those things. Maybe you can for a little bit, but you can't over a career. And if you're trusted, people will want you. People want to work with people they trust. And sometimes trust is more valuable than experience and skills. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more. Like, there's a saying that I love that's people like people like to do business with the people they love dealing with. Like, that's it. No? We want to surround ourselves with people who we like and make us feel good and help us become better persons too. And that's it. That's
right. That's right. I've seen many people get the advice, the way to be successful is to work hard. And that's not wrong, but it's not complete. Working hard lets people or leads people to want to trust you because you can get results, but working hard's not the goal. Getting the trust is the goal, and building an authentic, binding relationship. After my first job out of college, which I found, through the University Career Center, every single opportunity has come to me through my network of people. And that's a powerful thing. And, the culture in Mexico of friendship and networks is probably stronger than I would say in the US by and large. And that's a powerful asset to have. And I was telling someone, I said, people will never understand how I got the job at LinkedIn. It's a great story that kind of brings this conversation together. I found the job at LinkedIn, or the job at LinkedIn found me, because I went to a birthday party of my son was in daycare. He was 5. He was going to daycare, and one of his classmates had a birthday party, and I went to it. And probably like many people, you're like, oh, screaming children for 3 hours. I don't think I can do this. And you try to get your wife to go. Well, it was we both went. My wife and I went. I met someone, just like at the basketball game last night. We talked. We just walked around. It was a kids' amusement park, right? With rides and balloons and everything. And it was bad food. And I love bad food. And so we just got to talk. And this guy was applying for a job at LinkedIn. And I helped him think about how to negotiate. And I wasn't there. And a few months later, he called me and said, hey, would you like to interview for this head of HR job? It's the first one at LinkedIn. And I really think you'd be great. That was from knowing me for an hour at a kid's birthday party. That job came to me. And it wasn't because I wanted to go work at LinkedIn, so I was applying. I wasn't. And in fact, when he said that, my first answer was, no, I'm okay. I don't know that I want to do that. And then I interviewed and I realized this is the job for me, and I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks and I wanted it badly, but I didn't know, and so that's networking. It's not going to a party where you don't know anybody. It's, I always say networking is helping people, and asking people, for help. That's networking,
Absolutely.
And you never know where it's going to come. But it's a story that I like to tell people, like, I wasn't like super smart talking to a headhunter. No, that's not how this happened. Yeah.
I love that you shared that story with us. And it's a great way to close our conversation, because it's an amazing example of, how the importance of, treating people like what they are, people, and being a good person, and just, building your network by precisely helping others. And I love that you just said asking others for help too, because often we either think that we're too good or too bad to ask for help. And that's not true. We should all be able to recognize and be willing to ask for help for others, and also always be able and willing to help other people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you said it great. I can't say it any better. Well,
thank you very much for spending this hour with us. Before we take off, I just want to acknowledge you for an amazing career and amazing work that you're doing. I know whenever I listen, to the comments about your classes at EASD, I'm like, I have to go to one and just be there. So really take my hat off. Thank you very much for being here with us. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Efrain. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you for what you're doing and spreading the word and helping other people. This is where we are in my life, and where you are in your life this is the gift that we can give, is our
Absolutely.
wisdom and our ideas. And I can do this all day, you know, and it fills me to be able to do that. And I just want to say one final thing that if I let it go, I would kill myself after, which is I just finished a book on the future of work. It's called Workquake, and we will put it out. You know, you can find it on Amazon now. It's up. I'm in the middle of having it translated into Spanish, and we'll have a digital copy available hopefully in a few months. But I'm very excited about it, and it is a map that I think you will love, and hopefully, you know, the listeners will love too. So thank you for giving me the chance to say that.
That's amazing. I look forward to reading it. We'll put it in the notes of the show, absolutely. And thank you again. I look forward to reading that. Thank you very much. Y muchísimas gracias también a todos ustedes por escuchar este y todos los episodios de Entre Mentores DLC. Recuerden, este es un programa semanal, así es que si no lo han hecho ya, suscríbanse al mismo y compartan este y todos los episodios de Entre Mentores DLC, porque estoy seguro de que entre sus familiares, colegas y amigos hay personas que se pueden beneficiar muchísimo de los consejos y lecciones que grandes líderes como Steve hoy nos están compartiendo. Muchas gracias como siempre a Ricolto Café, el mejor café de México, por acompañarme en esta aventura de vida todos los días. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y esto es Entre Mentores DLC. Hasta la próxima.